bond in that deposit account, a United States bond. All right, so there is a money trail. They don't just create money out of nothing. They create it out of the system. And so there is a money trail. And what in effect it does, what it has the practical effect of doing, is converting what the bank holds into some transactionable cash. It makes the bank capable of loaning more money on the resources it possesses, and therefore allows interest rates to be lower. Interest rates would be twice as high if the government did not create currency through the banking system.
Created. Central bank control this through capital requirements, the reserve, that's what we call, fractional reserve banking. That's the fraction that's reserved, and interest rate.
Yeah, all banking is going to be fractional reserve banking, because if it's not fractional reserve banking, you'll have to borrow money by essentially paying back twice as much as whatever you borrow. Secondly, what would your reserve number be? If it's not 10%, then 12%. What number would you choose? Because it's completely arbitrary, and it really has to do with your expectation that either the economy has a functional future or it doesn't. What has made our economy functionally have no future is that we are no longer producing stuff. We're no longer producing goods. We have exported all the production and value creation jobs to other countries, and we are importing wealth from those countries, from that labor. And that can't last forever, because eventually those countries will learn how to abuse their own people, and they won't need us anymore to do it for them. They won't need us to whip their own slaves. They'll be able to do it. And then we'll be out of business. And then our economy falls to pieces.
Yes. The central banks control the cost of money. That's how they control how quickly the money supply grows out. If the idea that pretty much all money is debt seems strange to you, you don't have a clue what's going on. You don't understand the first thing.
Yeah, well, you haven't listened to my videos. You don't know what you're talking about, so fuck you. Yeah, I've never claimed anything else. Who is claiming anything else? Who's claiming that money is anything else but a claim to stuff, an IOU? Who's claiming it's anything else but an IOU?
Now, why is doing it this way a problem? Why is the money system problematic? If you have an increasing money supply, and understand it must be ever increasing. If almost all money is debt, and that debt needs to be repaid, you need to keep expanding. Yeah.
No, it's not the debt that's the problem. It's the interest that is the problem. So yes, you can keep expanding it if you didn't have to pay interest on it. It's the interest payments that fuck the system, because now you have to somehow out of nowhere create this extra money to pay back in interest. That means you're gonna have to cannibalize something else to make that payment.
To repay the previous debt and so on. You cannot allow credit destruction, or the way I've explained it to you, let's call it debt destruction. That's just what has just happened recently. Yeah, when a lot of debt can't be repaid, it's destroyed.
Yeah, they haven't destroyed anything, okay? What they did was they sold off to the government all the bad debt and letting them hold those liabilities. So when those bad contracts are finally declared dead debt, unretrievable debt, where we can't get the money back, impossible, the people don't have it, when they're finally declared bankrupt, or whatever the right term might be for what happens when you chase these people down and have these mortgages they're not going to pay, yeah, the government will be holding the fucking bag, because they've been sold a bill of goods.
The debt is money, so money's being destroyed. Yeah, it's the same thing. And you get this unwinding effect. Basically, the money creation process goes into reverse. And that can't be allowed to happen, for reasons I've just explained. So the government is printing money to compensate. Yeah, it's not allowed to go back.
It's printing money because there's no possible way. We have already converted too much stuff into interest-bearing investment capital. And so there's too many claims. There's too many IOUs for too few resources.
Because the money supply must expand. So as you can see, the money system is anything but laissez-faire. Okay, but so what? What's the problem? Well, I said it benefits certain people. It benefits people who have access to large amounts of capital. Who has access to capital? People in organisations that already have capital because they're deemed creditworthy. Yeah. Okay, and if you know that the money supply...
Well, yeah, well, lots of people who weren't very credit-worthy have had lots of access to capital, so that argument doesn't really go anywhere either. Certainly, any system can be gamed by people who know how to play the system, so you could just argue that there's been a ton of people gaming the system. They've been gaming the stock market, they've been selling people crap that has no real value. They just made it so convoluted that no one could tell it has no real value. They could only have value over a 10-year period, but over a 30-year period, it was impossible for it to have value because everything written into it was unsustainable. But anyway.
Spends most of its time increasing, and you know that the government's not going to let it fall too far in any case. What's the logical thing to do? It's to fill your boots. Yeah, it makes sense to grab large amounts of capital and invest that in income-generating assets. Now, I mean, you might screw up. You might pick a bad pony and lose big, and people do.
Yeah, no, they don't lose big. That's the whole point, because they've got a racket. They've got a racket where they sell all the big losses back to the federal government. So they take all the gain and all the crap they make. They'll sell a couple of trillion or 5 trillion or 8 trillion, you know, in the way of Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, trillions of dollars of bad debt they made profit off of, and they've now saddled the government with.
If you do well, you're going to do much better, because you're utilising so much more capital. Basically, it allows organisations to leverage an option that's reserved for people and organisations who already have a lot of money.
And all this has nothing to do with the fractional reserve banking and the existence of the Federal Reserve. It really has nothing to do with that. This is a whole different kind of scam that isn't dependent on that whatsoever.
They have this option of leveraging. That's what the flexible, this system, flexible money system allows. And that alone explains a lot of the wealth disparities that we have.
Yeah, bullshit. We know where the wealth has been generated. It's been generated in ownership of foreign assets, an investment in foreign countries where they can exploit the labor and make huge profits off that competitive advantage, and come in and wipe out the existing infrastructure of not only industry but distribution. And that's where the money has been made. That's where the wealth or the claims to ownership have been created by. So this is just babble and bullshit.
Look at the biggest companies out there. They're all debt laden. Why is that? If they're so successful, shouldn't they pay off the debt? Well, no.
Yeah, well, there's no advantage for them to pay off the debt. That's right, because you can borrow money cheaper. The amount of money you pay in interest is less than the amount of money you can make if you reinvest the money instead. If you can make more money investing money than you can, because they have these stupid instruments where you get a tax-free benefit if you buy a United States savings bond or some other bullshit like that. And so that's a whole nother subject. It has nothing, again, to do with the basic nature of fractional reserve banking, whether or not it or is not a viable way to do banking. It's the only way to do a bank.
Because given the option of capital today against tomorrow, you take it. You fill your boots. Because asset prices will be going up. They have to. Because the money supply is going to expand. Yeah. Same with individuals. You say debt's a choice. In this system, it's barely a choice. It's like